Right now, somewhere on your body, there are tiny muscles that are completely useless to you. They have been useless to you your entire life. They were useless to your parents. They were useless to every human who has ever lived for at least the last 100,000 years. And yet, evolution kept them, which is strange. Evolution is not sentimental. Evolution does not hold on to things that don't work. If something stops being useful, natural selection quietly removes it over enough generations. No ceremony, no farewell, just gone. But these muscles are still here. You have felt them your entire life and probably never thought about what they're actually doing. They fire when you step into a cold room. They fire when something scares you. They fire when a song hits a note that your brain was not prepared for. They give you goosebumps. And the reason evolution kept them, the reason your skin still does this completely pointless thing, reveals something about the human body that most people have never considered. It reveals that underneath your clothes, your skin is still behaving like it belongs to an animal covered in fur. And that changes the entire story of why you're wearing clothes at all. Here is what is actually happening when you get goosebumps. Your skin is covered in tiny muscles. Each one sits at the base of a hair follicle. They're called erector pili muscles, completely involuntary. You cannot control them consciously. They are wired directly into your autonomic nervous system, the part of you that handles things without asking your permission first. When something cold or frightening hits your system, adrenaline spikes. The erector pili muscles contract. The hair follicle gets yanked upright. The skin bunches around the base, and you get a bump. In a cat, that same reflex turns it into something twice its apparent size. The fur lifts. The animal looks enormous. The predator reconsiders. In a dog, the hackles go up along the spine. Same reflex. Same adrenaline, same ancient system. In a porcupine, evolution took this exact same mechanism and made the hairs into quills and the erector pili muscles large enough to lock them into a defensive wall of spikes. A porcupine defending itself is running the same software as your arm in a cold room, just with significantly higher stakes. Your goosebumps are doing the same thing, trying to puff up fur that hasn't been there for about 1,000,000 years. Your body is attempting a threat display using equipment it no longer has. That's not a flaw, it's a fossil, a biological relic of an ancestor that was covered in thick fur and needed this reflex to survive, which immediately raises the obvious question, what happened to the fur? About 1.2 million years ago, somewhere on the African savanna, a hominin ancestor started losing its coat. Not all at once, not dramatically, just gradually, over many generations, the thick terminal hair thinned out, the fur retreated, the skin underneath, which had been pale and protected, suddenly found itself exposed to direct equatorial sunlight for the first time. It got darker, fast. The genetic evidence for this appears at least 1.2 million years ago, which means by the time Homo erectus was walking around Africa, the fur was already mostly gone. And the reason this happened is one of those evolutionary stories that sounds completely backwards until it suddenly makes perfect sense. Fur is excellent insulation, but insulation works in both directions. In a cold environment, fur keeps heat in. In an open savanna at midday, with a body generating heat through sustained movement, fur traps that heat inside, and the animal overheats. A lion sprints for 30 seconds and then has to lie in the shade for an hour because it cannot cool down fast enough. Its fur is working against it. Homo erectus was persistence hunting, chasing prey across open ground in the middle of the day for hours, not minutes. The animals being hunted were faster in short bursts, but could not thermoregulate at speed. They overheated and collapsed. The humans who could stay cool while moving could run longer, and the ones with less fur could sweat more efficiently. Sweat evaporates directly from bare skin, carrying heat away with it instantly. With fur in the way, that process is blocked. Less fur meant better cooling. Better cooling meant longer hunts. Longer hunts meant more food. More food, over enough generations, meant a larger brain. Your brain exists partly because your ancestors got good at sweating. Evolution is occasionally humbling. But here is the problem that nobody in that process asked about. The equatorial savanna is hot during the day. At night, it is not, and in the Eurasian winters that Homo erectus walked into during the migration out of Africa, it was not even close to warm. A body that just spent 1,000,000 years efficiently losing its insulation was now standing in a Siberian winter with basically nothing between its skin and the cold. That is when humans did something that no other species has ever done. They stole the fur coats of other animals. Figuring out exactly when humans started wearing clothing is genuinely difficult, because plant fibers and animal hides decay. They don't last in the archaeological record the way stone tools do. So researchers did something clever. They tracked lice. Specifically, they tracked when head lice and body lice became two separate species. Body lice are unique. They are the only lice that live in clothing rather than on the body itself. They can't survive on bare skin. They evolved specifically to inhabit the folds of garments. By running a molecular clock on the genetic divergence between head lice and body lice, researchers at the Max Planck Institute determined that body lice evolved somewhere between 170,000 and 83,000 years ago, which means humans were wearing clothing continuously, with enough consistency for a parasite to evolve specifically to live in it, at least 83,000 years ago. We know when humans invented clothing because we tracked when lice moved in. Evolution is occasionally disgusting. And then there's the Denisova needle, found in a cave in Siberia, 50,000 years old. A bone needle, beautifully made, with a cleanly drilled hole for thread. Not Homo sapiens, Denisovans. A completely separate human species, extinct now, stitching tailored multi-layered garments to survive Siberian winters 50,000 years ago. And 30,000 years ago, in what is now Georgia, archaeologists found wild flax fibers that had been deliberately spun, twisted, and dyed. Pink, black, turquoise. Paleolithic humans were not just wrapping themselves in raw hides for warmth. They were choosing colors. They were making aesthetic decisions about what they wore before civilization existed. Fashion is apparently very, very old. Now here's the part that nobody talks about when they explain Goosebumps. They don't just happen in the cold. They happen when you're scared. They happen when you hear something beautiful. A song hits a specific note, a choir swells, a piece of music does something your brain was not expecting, and your skin responds like you are an animal about to be attacked. This is called aesthetic frisson, and the mechanism is genuinely strange. When you hear something intensely emotionally charged, your amygdala, the part of your brain that handles fear and threat response, registers the sudden acoustic intensity as a potential danger signal. For a fraction of a second, it doesn't know whether what it's hearing is a threat or not. Adrenaline spikes. Erector pili muscles fire. A millisecond later, your conscious brain catches up and goes, "That's just a song. We're fine." The adrenaline dissipates. Dopamine floods in. And you're left with goosebumps and a feeling that is difficult to describe but unmistakable when you experience it. The reason music can make your skin do what cold does is that your skin doesn't know the difference between being frightened and being moved. It just knows that something significant is happening. Your body is responding to a beautiful sound the same way an ancient hairy ancestor responded to a predator appearing from the dark. Both things get the same reflex, which is either deeply poetic or deeply absurd, depending on your perspective, possibly both. So here's where all of this lands. You got dressed this morning without thinking about it. Habit, temperature, social expectation. You probably didn't consider that the act of putting on clothes is the direct result of a species that lost its fur 1,000,000 years ago and then had to solve the problem it created. The goosebumps on your arm right now aren't a glitch. They're a message from a body that still remembers what it felt like to need fur. A body that has not updated its threat display software in 1,000,000 years because the software still technically runs, even without the hardware it was built for. You are not a naked ape that learned to dress. You are a hairy ape that traded its fur for a brain large enough to replace it with something better. Something that could be woven in colors, layered against any temperature on Earth, removed and washed and redesigned. Something that let one species leave the equatorial savanna and walk into every climate on the planet. Your clothes are not fashion. They are not culture. They are not habit. They are the solution to a problem your skin still hasn't forgotten. Every time you get goosebumps, your body is remembering what it gave up to be human.